it's Thursday, 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Mancunian Candidates on FabRadioInternational.com. Myself, I'm Paul Ripley, and that guy over there.
I'm Mike Royce, and it's good to be here, but I believe something's just happened.
Well, what do you want to go straight to it now? It's the terrible, terrible news of what's happening in the UK right now. I've got the figures in front of me. 35,383 new infections in 24 hours. There's also been 532 deaths in 24 hours. Total deaths so far, 66,000 people. Over that. Joe, we do this show every week. We've been doing the show as a podcast for many years. And today, when I heard the news, I was just, you get sort of beaten down with it, don't you? About the news, about the virus, about what's going on and how people ignore it. But today, I was upset. I mean, literally, 2 hours ago, this information came out. I'm upset at what's going on. I'm just lost with it all. And I'm really put off doing the show tonight because this is, just imagine, it's 66,000 people, families, fathers, brothers, sisters. It's just terrible, terrible. And we're deadened to it. We're used to it now because it's been bombarded. We're in level 3, tier 3, tier 2. It's nonsense. Mike, I know you're angry about what's going on regarding Christmas.
Well, both. I'm fed up because here we are, we're doing this show and it's Anglo-American politics, current affairs, and yet what it's beginning to feel like is it's a show based around the two capitals of COVID. I mean, we're just we've literally got the two countries, the United States and the United Kingdom, that are leading the path in destructive behaviour, in that we're ignoring science now and that we're just crashing on with this and people are dying left, right and centre. I mean, I've got a massive problem with what's happening in the UK. Later on, we're going to get into detail over the United States, which has got to, I was referring, if you've watched the earlier shows, where I said that January was going to be a cauldron of death, and it sounded a bit dramatic. That cauldron is already nearly here. It's happening quicker than I could have imagined. But let's just have a look at the situation in the UK. We've got a nice video to watch.
If business owners had hoped for a pre-Christmas boost, they were set to be disappointed. The Netherlands is back in lockdown. Non-essential shops, hairdressers, cinemas and gyms will have to stay closed until mid-January. In what would usually be a bustling area of The Hague at this time of year, the streets were near empty. But those out and about accepted the new rules.
It's necessary, so I approve it completely.
They implemented it too late. Should have been done in middle of November.
There are so many people that are sick or that are at hospitals helping them. So, I mean, we're fine,
Schools and daycare centres will also remain shut as the government tries to fight a rise in COVID-19 cases. Social interaction will be restricted, with people told to limit contact at home to 2 people. That will be relaxed over Christmas to allow 3 visitors. In a televised address to the nation, Prime Minister Mark Rutte insisted the restrictions were necessary, saying we have to bite through this very sour apple before things get better. And he's not the only European leader either taking or contemplating tough measures. In Germany, where the government announced a new lockdown yesterday, drive-through Christmas markets have sprung up around the country. Food can be bought for consumption in vehicles, one of the few seasonal options for people who want to escape their homes.
It's a lovely idea. We like it a lot.
Unusual ideas for unusual times.
I think they've done really well at creating some atmosphere, especially for the children.
The German lockdown will come into force tomorrow in an effort to tackle stubbornly high infection rates, and people rush to get their last-minute Christmas shopping done. Chancellor Angela Merkel forced to take further steps after lighter restrictions failed. And the Italian government may be forced to follow. In one of the main shopping streets in Rome, the queues were not at the tills, but at COVID test sites. Worries have grown about crowds gathering for Christmas events, and a curfew and a ban on non-essential movement are being contemplated.
And it's now likely that the next big mistake will be over the easing of restrictions over Christmas. And this isn't smarmy lawyers. Let me give you the British Medical Journal. The British Medical Journal yesterday said this: "We believe the government is about to blunder into another major error that will cost many lives." The Prime Minister should listen to that advice, not just ignore it as usual. And if he really is going to press ahead with this, can he tell us what's the assessment, and has it been done, of the impact that it will have on infection rates and increased pressure on the NHS? What's the impact?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I wish he'd have the guts just to say what he really wants to do, which is to cancel the plans people have made and cancel Christmas. I think that's what he's driving at, Mr. Speaker. He's looking a bit blank. I think that's what he's driving at. But I can tell him that as of today, and just this morning, there is actually, as I say, unanimous agreement across all the UK government, across all the devolved administrations, including members of all parties, Mr. Speaker, including his own, that we should proceed in principle with the existing regulations, Mr. Speaker, because we don't want to criminalise people's long-made plans, Mr. Speaker, but we do think it's absolutely vital that people should, at this very, very tricky time, exercise a high degree of personal responsibility, especially when they come into contact with elderly people, and avoid contact with elderly people wherever possible. And that is how, by being sensible and cautious, not by imposing endless lockdowns or cancelling Christmas, as he would appear to want to do. That's the only implication I can draw from what he said, Mr. Speaker, unless he wants to announce some other idea. That is the way we will continue to work together to keep this virus under control, to defeat it and take the country forward.
What can you say? What can you say? I couldn't agree more with what Keir Starmer was saying and what a lot of sensible people are saying. Well, I've said it before on this show, this Christmas nonsense, this obsession with, Christmas. And he's going on like, he would cancel Christmas. And is Christmas worth dying for?
Great point. In Northern Ireland, I've just been told that from Boxing Day, there will be a 6-week lockdown from Boxing Day. But prior to Boxing Day, help yourself, go get it. Absolute nonsense. But the thing is, there's an article in the Manchester Evening News, our local newspaper, and it's a local nursing home. And it states, the owner of these, I think he owns 3 nursing homes, that 40% of the staff don't believe in the vaccination, having the jab. 40% of the staff. So, where does that leave you? It leaves you with this, and my thought about it this week was when the internet came out, and we was all, wow, and it's an amazing thing, and still is. I mean, we're on the internet right now, but when the internet came out, it was all the thing about information. Information, it's at our fingertips. We just do that on our computers and we find out who was number 1 in 1961. Instantly. And it's giving out information, but they forgot to tell you that a large percentage of that information will be disinformation.
It didn't start out that way, that's why.
But it's gone that way. And it's the future as well. And I think now we can't turn it off. We can't go back. But the future of politics, the future of the world, tends to be based around information from the internet. And I think we're in for a very weird time.
Well, I think it will push people back to newspapers, and it will push people back to what can be seen in eventually. I'm hoping. Well, I'm just getting to that. I'm hoping that there will be a movement of people that decide now is the time to go backwards a little bit and ask for more guarantees of what you're reading. And you should be, if you're reading something, you need to know that it's accurate, and you should try to find out. I don't think you can trust Facebook. I don't think you can trust a lot of the stuff online. But you can trust some of the news organisations.
Here's the argument, though, and we talked about it before in the office. People are judgmental on the vaccination, saying not enough testing time, it's nanobots and all that nonsense. However, the pharmaceutical companies have lied through their teeth in the past. And people have died, and there's been children born with all sorts of issues and problems because of vaccinations. And so the people who are saying we should trust, like you trust the doctor. But can you trust the doctor when they're giving out?
Yeah, but you keep missing. We've had this before, and you just keep missing this one crucial factor out, and that is that a lot of what you're talking about happened in the past, and things are getting better. Things are bound to get better. You can, so are you telling me? Are you telling me
Trump being in power was better?
What's that got to do with what we're discussing?
Why do you have to swear me?
No, what's that got to do with this? What's that?
Misinformation.
Bringing Trump into a conversation on vaccines.
People you trust.
It's ridiculous.
Well, here's Trump saying that you should.
Ridiculous.
He says he should put bleach in your veins.
No,
so that's why.
What has that got to do with vaccination? It's got to do nothing.
It matters
with it.
all the way.
It doesn't matter that.
I'm
talking about the process.
Go backwards to go forwards.
I'm talking about the process. I'm talking about reality. How many people die from vaccinations now compared to how many people did 80 years ago? It's minimal because science and medicine progresses. We can do cancer treatments now that give people a year's life that they wouldn't have had.
Absolutely, it's an amazing advancement.
Right then, well, give them a bit of credit then for
in
once.
The 70s, which is 100 years ago, fluoride.
Yes,
so that was 100 years ago.
Yeah, I know. So but we're learning as we go.
We're learning as we go.
Is it not better?
We're learning that the
just,
company and the government covered it up.
Well, let me just tell you, that couple that have developed the vaccine with BioNTech have done wonders, and they're two people that arrived in Germany because of the possibility of settling there, because they were taking migrants, they were taking people who were leaving another country because of a problem, and because of the EU being so understanding in that way, they've saved the day. I mean, that is an amazing vaccine that they've produced. Things are getting better. Science is improving, and
but
this is it.
Missing the point.
I'm not missing the point.
Misinformation is getting bigger.
Yeah, well, don't confuse the two. We shouldn't be confusing the two.
I don't think you should confuse the two.
You're confusing the two because you're mentioning Donald Trump after a load of people that have worked all these hours on these vaccines. Donald Trump.
I mentioned Donald Trump for the reason of him spreading misinformation about vaccines, and so quite clearly, it should be in the conversation.
It's in the conversation, but we should be pushing now to get guarantees on the level of information.
How do you tell the truth?
For starters, we need to regulate Facebook.
Yeah.
That's number one. We need to get Zuckerberg in a room and say, "Hi, you've had a good run, haven't you, sunshine? You've been happy to watch all this crap. You've been happy to play a part in putting Caligula in the White House.
Yeah.
So now it's about time you submitted to some regulation, because you can't be trusted. I tell you what, Mark, you're not capable of doing this job. You've got a weird face. Now piss off and let's break up Facebook and keep it.
Got to do with it?
Facebook, he's just got a weird face. He offends me.
Can we move on?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had bit of feedback, bit of fan mail again. Wonderful. So a lot of people had a problem with Brexit. We were described last week as defeatists, probably funded by the EU. Todd Frame said, "Oh dear, more Remainer rubbish." Life of TikToks says Brexit is political, it's not economical. Brexit came from the people, not the establishment. He's saying how important fishing is and that the Conservative Party won't let go of it, and the EU can't afford to lose it. And he says that one side will be worst hit politically with a no deal. He doesn't really elaborate on that. Headley Smedley Ponsonby of Mercia says, "That day we found out we were leaving Europe," he's quoting us last week, "Speak for yourself. As an English European, I'm only leaving the EU." What a tosser you are. You know exactly what we were saying, and you know exactly where we were coming from. And you've got another moron like you who goes, in the cage, his name is, going, "Yeah, leaving Europe, clueless." Yeah, no, let me just explain. We're not leaving a landmass, no, but the perception will be that we're not part of Europe. If we do crash out with a no deal, we're not part of Europe in the sense we're not trading with them. Our passport doesn't give us free access and visitation rights to anyone for however long we want. We can't settle there, work there, no freedom of movement. And this is what happened in the 60s. We were blackballed from joining the EU by France, who perceived us to have a transatlantic inclination because we were trying to get the independence independent nuclear deterrent. So, try and do your homework if you start going on about this.
Poor men of Europe.
Yeah, we will be seen as left Europe, even though the landmass won't move. Europe is not just... we can't just say we're Europeans when we've decided to turn our back on them. It doesn't matter where the landmass is. And 100 GMO 78. Good God, why don't just use your names, guys? At least the English and Welsh voted for it, unlike the Northern Irish and Scots. Got a point. Cold Breeze says, has that guy had a cable up his... I don't know which one or what hell you're talking about, but here's where it really gets good. So Mick A says, I love this, it's better than Corrie. I'm glad he likes us being battered by Brexiteers. Van Kloos Vanguard allows me to have a little conversation about this. The UK is not leaving Europe, it's leaving the political organisation known as European Union. Again, I've just addressed that, you utter clown. A few other points. I have never met a Brexiteer who wants to restore the empire or anything like it. They want to escape the never-ending responsibilities and guilt that many people, including almost all Remainers, seem to hang on to. Okay, responsibilities / integrity. If someone's actually providing you a service like the EU is, maybe you would not see that as a responsibility, maybe as a duty, but you clearly you know best. And if you haven't met a Brexiteer that wants to restore the empire and start flag waving and going backwards in time, then you haven't been watching the news, you haven't been speaking to people, because believe me, you may think you're not the tosser that you are, but I know you are the one. You are completely in that vein, and I'll get to another point in a minute on this. He then goes on to say the world's economies do not have employment law, banking law and economic systems aligned, and okay, well they do, you moron, because when somebody changes the interest rate in this country on banking finances, we will only change it in line with another country. Otherwise, the money will be taken by the billionaires and the corporations out of our banks and put somewhere where they'll earn more money. So we have got economic alignment, employment law. If you have better rights for a world-class chemist or physician or whoever in one country rather than another, they'll go and move there and work there. So yeah, you end up having to have very similar employment laws or you lose out. Banking laws is a very easy one. If we haven't got integrated and aligned banking laws, how come we had a world financial crisis in 2008, you complete buffoon? That's because Glass-Steagall was removed by Bill Clinton, who then made it a lot easier for banks to use all the depositors' money to gamble. So then Tony Blair had to do the same here. And then Europe did exactly the same. And very soon the entire world was gambling with everybody's money and they blew the economy up. That couldn't have happened if the banking rights and banking systems were not aligned. And then there is he says, if there's no such thing as sovereignty, why are most countries not part of the EU and don't want any part of it? It's because they're not next to it. You imbecile. That's the whole point. You can sell something cheaper to someone next door. And if you get allowed to sell to them without a tariff and they sell it to you, it's the cheapest way of trading in the world. Trading with Australia, trading with Japan is far more expensive. Ask anybody who's ordered something online and it arrives and you get a customs bloody surcharge, which is the situation you'll be in if we don't have a deal with the EU. Commonplace things will start to get more expensive, and then he really caps it off with just basic insults. That's just the first 2 minutes of two blokes talking bollocks. The one thing this proves is that there are people as thick as shit on the Remainer side too. Even strongly rational, intelligent Remainers will be embarrassed by these two, because the thick morons were all supposed to be on the Brexit side, and then there's loads of people going, oh my god, they haven't got a clue, it's Remainer TV. There you go.
And that cheered me up. Can I have that last insult, please?
What, the thick morons?
Yeah.
Even strongly rational, intelligent Remainers will be embarrassed by these two, because the thick morons were all supposed to be on the Brexit side.
And don't forget, you can email the show. It's Mancunian Candidates at fabradiointernational.com if you want to add some insults to that, or just comment on the YouTube site itself.
Absolutely, but as a rebuttal to this, we've got a little video that'll explain if you are actually thinking that we've got that there is a possibility of this Australia deal. We have explained that it doesn't exist.
And after that, hopefully, joining us from Alaska is Tom Anderson, hopefully. Depends on our producer's got it lined up and all that type of stuff. Let's play the video.
I heard there Boris Johnson's Australia deal. That means no deal, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I mean, Australia does not have a trade agreement with the European Union, so that would very much mean no deal.
Well, it sounds...
One of the things I've tried to say all along here is that I've had my doubts about the sincerity of the UK government in wanting to negotiate an agreement, and I think the basic problem here is that despite the Prime Minister's comments about the EU rejecting a Canada-style trade agreement, the UK negotiators have been asking for more than that. They've still been asking to cherry-pick bits of the single market that they like, such as the community licence for hauliers to be able to drive around the European Union, which the EU flatly said no to.
Well, it sounds like a change in tactic, though, but realistically, we've always been preparing for a no-deal outcome, haven't we?
Well, I mean, at the level of UK PLC, maybe, but the problem for businesses, of course, has been that until you know what kind of trading arrangement, what kind of trade regime you're going to face, it's very difficult to make any preparations. A simple example being, will we face tariffs or won't we face tariffs? What kind of checks at the border will we face? Well, now that's become very much clearer. And frankly, at this stage of the game, there is very little difference economically between a deal or no deal, because a basic free trade agreement that would give you zero tariffs and zero quotas would still leave all the non-trade barriers intact by dint of leaving the single market. So you're still going to be facing checks at the border. We've been told this by the government. There'll be customs declarations needed, deal or no deal. There will be sanitary and phytosanitary checks on both sides of the border for animal and plant produce, deal or no deal. And of course, the knock-on effects and disruptions to supply chains that will entail, particularly now given COVID and the stricken nature of our manufacturing sector in such circumstances, could drive many firms out of business.
Indeed. In the meanwhile, the EU leaders, they say that they'll continue talking. So there's still plenty going on behind the scenes, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, it is possible. Of course, never say never. It is possible that in the middle of November something will be pulled out of a hat. But I think the chances of that are quite low, so long as the UK government holds out on things such as dynamic regulatory alignment, because Brexit economically only makes sense if you want to pursue a different set of regulations to the European Union. So whilst we still have that up in the air around the nature of labour regulations or environmental standards or agricultural standards, bear in mind, of course, the UK government refused to enshrine agricultural standards in law, lest, for example, that it wants to pursue a trade agreement with the United States that would mean lowering those standards. The two sides are still poles apart in that area. And then you have the totemic issue of fisheries, which the UK government doesn't want to appear to compromise on, and, of course, the vexing problem of state aid. Now, the EU are not going to compromise on their principles there. So unless the key issues around regulatory alignment and level playing field and state aid are resolved, there really isn't any scope for an agreement. The two sides in those key areas still seem poles apart.
Indeed, as you say, there's not much movement, is there? But could there be a trade-off then? Britain gets the fish and the EU gets the rules, all about the level playing fields. While the fish is a tiny part of the economy, sovereignty is key to many Brexiteers, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the sovereignty is an illusion. There is no trade agreement anywhere in the world that doesn't involve some trade-off for sovereignty. Now, you can bleat about sovereignty all you like, but if you want to have a trade agreement with the United States, you're going to accept their agricultural standards, and you're going to accept the notion of American big pharmaceutical firms getting a crack at the NHS. Now, frankly, I doubt whether the British public would swallow that. But by dint of simply engaging in negotiations over trade, you have to come to a middle ground, and that, I'm afraid, is trading off sovereignty.
Do you think we will get a deal, Alex?
With the European Union?
Yes.
I think it's increasingly unlikely.
I like the fact he's having a conversation there for a few minutes, and then he go, oh, do you think we'll have a deal? And he goes, with the European Union? Well, it'd be strange if she was talking about something else after all that, wouldn't it?
Welcome back to Remainer TV. Don't forget, email the show, Mancunian Candidates at fabradiointernational.com, and we're back on that one. However, we were talking before about misinformation. I saw a show the other day, and it clearly defined something which hit home to me. Sugar puffs.
What about them?
Well, they're not that sugary anymore, and they're not that puffy, are they?
No, Adam, I didn't like them then. They had an oily sort of horrible thing that floated on top of the milk. I didn't like them.
Just saying, sugar puffs.
Sugar puffs.
Misinformation everywhere.
Cocoa Pops were good though, because they made they made the milk chocolatey. I haven't had them for ages either. Okay. I don't know. Maybe everything's a bit rubbish now.
Misinformation.
Feels that misinformation.
Sugar puffs.
I don't know.
Right, where are we up to?
Right. Well, we're still in the middle of a lot of nonsense, and I think it's good to have a look at the reality of a situation. We've been talking about voter fraud, and we know why Trump's doing it. We've answered it on the show. It's a grift. He's trying to hang in there. And
in the meantime, can I add to this as well?
Yes.
He's mithering his supporters to give him money.
Yeah, we did. That's what
money's flowing into Trump at the moment.
We showed that last week where he made 200 million within the weeks of this while it was going on. This week it got to the Electoral College and it was certified, and that was the end of that. And you'd think, well, is this over? No, they're still pushing it. Sidney Powell, his lawyer, is now got a pre-action letter off Dominion, who wants to sue him because basically she's ruined their business and made everybody believe that the machines Dominion operate the voting machines that are so crucial in Georgia, where they're saying that they were that wrong that it's robbed Donald Trump of the election. Yeah. But here's the thing, I always like to talk about consequences. And if you think, well, okay, he's just having a go at trying to win, he's trying to hang in there and get a little bit of money, I mean, is there any harm in this? Well, let's have a see if there's any harm in accusing a country of engaging in voter fraud and having people believe it.
Now to breaking news. A former Houston police captain has been arrested and charged with running a repairman off the road and then pulling a gun, claiming that he was part of a massive election fraud conspiracy.
Investigators say that repairman was innocent and the allegations were false. Channel 2 investigator Mario Diaz has been reading the court documents in this breaking story. He's live in the newsroom with details. Mario.
Keith, prior to the presidential election, Mark Aguirre, a former Houston police captain, claimed there was widespread voter fraud in Harris County. He even reached out to Channel 2 Investigates. We pushed him for evidence, but Aguirre never provided any of it. Now, in a reversal of political fortune, this former HPD captain was arrested by HPD today, I should say, charged with allegedly running a repairman off the road on October 19th, holding him at gunpoint and claiming that he had 750,000 election ballots. In the end, it all appears to have been a conspiracy theory. Now, Aguirre faces the potential of up to 20 years in prison for the alleged aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. At the time, he told police that he was part of a group called Liberty Center, and what they were doing was conducting civilian investigations into ballot schemes. Investigators say Aguirre rammed the man's truck, then pointed a handgun at the repairman, forced him onto the ground. Aguirre allegedly putting his knee into the innocent man's back. No ballots were ever found. The man's truck was actually filled with air conditioning parts. The day after the incident, the DA's office says Aguirre was paid a total of $211,400 by the Liberty Center, and ultimately he was paid over $266,000. The Liberty Center is a Republican organization with a motto for God and country. This is a look at their website where they also raise money. Now, in a statement, District Attorney Kim Ogg said the following of Aguirre: he crossed the line from dirty politics to commission of a violent crime, and we are lucky no one was killed. Attorney Jared Woodfill of the Liberty Center tells me in the last 15 minutes, Dr. Horsley had hired Mark Aguirre's investigation firm, and he had a team of approximately 20 investigators on the case. Woodfill says that Dr. Horsley did not know what he was doing. He finds it hard to believe that Captain Aguirre would go stop a car, pull someone out of it, and then put a gun to the person's head. Woodfill adds Dr. Horsley was concerned and remains concerned about the integrity of elections in Harris County, the state, and nationwide. We are staying on top of this breaking story. More to come in the days ahead.
So that's what you get. That's what you get. I mean, you pump people full of passionate lies that you feed them, spoon feed them over time, and it's like radiation poisoning. They can be really reasonable, and they can start out just wondering if there might be something in it. But here's the thing. We live in a world where if somebody is elected president, there's a certain amount of credibility there. Even if you think the guy is a coarse asshole that you don't agree with and you don't like Trump, initially people thought, well, he might grow into the job. He can't be totally stupid because he's got this company that he built up and all the rest, because we didn't know that much about him. Even though he was one of the most famous people who ever lived, we didn't know enough about him. We just didn't, because he had a very shady side to him. And this is the problem. When there are certain people who thought, well, he's our president now and he's saying that there's this voter fraud, and he said about the birther situation where he accused Obama of not being American and not being birthed there. He was obviously a racist accusation, and the problem you've got now is it does go into what we have been discussing many times on the show about reality and fantasy, and this is a police chief that did this. I mean, he's kidnapping somebody because he's had private detectives following a guy, thinking that in the back of his van, not aircon repair equipment, he's got stolen ballot papers. It's insane.
It's down to that thing about who do you trust? Who do we trust anymore? I mean, in America, do you trust the police? Some parts of the states, no, you don't.
Yeah.
In here, I mean, I'm not trying to get a row going with you, Mike, because I'm sick to death of rowing with you. However, because at times you are a bit, the royal family, Prince Andrew, what should be done about him? What should be done about him? You're a big supporter of the royal family, and it's the thing again. Do you trust the royal family?
The Queen, I trust. She's a great public servant.
But I mean, what should be done about him?
Well, him
and Trump in Ireland together.
You question him. And then if there's enough, you indict him, don't you? Like anybody else, you put him in court and you try the evidence.
Our establishment?
There's always one.
If they're seen to get away
well,
with it
if you believe actually Victorian conspiracy theories, one of the royal family was Jack the Ripper. So
no, that's been disproved. No, hopefully, anyway, on the phone lines and on the video thingy, Majiggy, should be Tom Anderson, who can answer some of your questions. Tom, are you there?
Guys.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Good.
He's a little bit low in my headphones, but I'll just try and turn him up. You seem quite down a bit there, Tom.
I'm down in what sense?
Well, you sound usually quite more bubbly than this. Are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm listening to you knock law enforcement in America right before I even come on, so I'm smiling, thinking, "Oh Lord,
parts of
this
America.
is downfall on everything American." From the wonderful city of Manchester, where life is just perfect. When I die, I'll go to Manchester.
Right, that was a conspiracy theorist nutcase who just happened to be police. I was not knocking the police. I've met very fine policemen over there. But
you must admit there's parts of the states where we'll talk about trust and who do you trust in general. I mean, do we trust the government anymore? Do we trust pharmaceutical companies? And it comes to a point of, I mean, do we trust companies that produce machines that add the ballots up? Who do we trust? And where is it going to?
Well, I will tell you one thing. I trust the very few Republican mayors in America, like Kevin Faulconer in San Diego, who's working to ensure that voting, homelessness, drug rehab is working. I don't trust mayors of cities like Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, San Francisco, Detroit, New Orleans, Chicago, because they're Democrats and they're corrupt.
Democrats. It's not about people, how you can trust them. Because you've got a tag attached to them, you can say I can't trust them. How childish is that, Tom? Really? Come on.
Your question was, who can you trust?
Exactly.
I was giving you a negative response, which is you can't trust Democratic mayors, large cities in America.
Okay.
But I will tell you this. You can trust Republican governors in America, like of the great state of Texas and South Dakota and Alaska and other places where you see freedoms when it comes to mask and hand washing to the point where herd immunity is forthcoming in concert with vaccines. That's who I can
crazy.
Trust.
That's not true, Tom. That's just
I can trust
true.
my opinion. I wish I had a beard.
It's not.
So I could look at myself.
Your figures are absolutely apocalyptic this week, and I've got to say your Kirsty Gnome from South Dakota has done an appalling job. She's responsible for the death of tens of thousands of Americans with her quest for freedom. The mask wearing stops death.
She's probably the most popular governor in the nation per capita, per her constituency, so they like her.
Odd.
Just because you're popular doesn't mean to say you're going to win everything or do everything, does it, really, Tom? And I'm not being facetious.
Well, no, but if you don't measure, for instance, if you measure on statistics, then depending on the question, high could be bad or good, low could be bad or good, low crime, high taxes is bad, low crime is good, right? That's a measure. If a measure is popularity in a poll, and someone says, I favor the governor, that's good. If you guys always want to be devil's advocate or the counter and say, well, that's a bad thing, I mean, then we'll debate.
No, Tom, you've gone against yourself there by that comment. You just say you're judging people on trust because of who they're tied to. Now, I trust people on the quality they do, on how they deliver it. For example, we've never met, have we? But we met and I got to know you better. More than likely, I'd trust you 100%. It makes no difference what you vote and what party you're tied to. It's about the quality of the person. So why are you saying that nonsense?
Well, not nonsense.
Why is your GOP doing that?
You were talking about who you can trust and who you can't, and I'm saying demonstrably, tangibly, I believe some of the more prolific and opinionated and resolute Republican governors are doing a good job. And I feel there are a couple Republican mayors, even though most cities in America, when they run for an election, it's called nonpartisan, but we know that each candidate typically is aligned to a party. And I wasn't trying to start with bravado when I said I'm not a fan of those cities. I love the people. I love the communities. I've been to all of them aforementioned. But Seattle, I love. Portland, I love. I live there. But I think that the mayors have done a disservice in Seattle and Portland, certainly in LA, certainly in San Francisco, Chicago. This gal, the African-American gal, this recalcitrant, arrogant, acerbic gal, well, the homogeneity of that is they're all Democrats. So I think I would like to see more Republicans get into municipal leadership. Now, you asked about pharmaceuticals. We're going to have to hope for the best. For many years, we've trusted pharmaceuticals with polio vaccinations and smallpox and others. So how do you trust them? You just do. And my suspicion is the vaccines will work, including your Brits Oxford AstraZeneca one.
Now you're part. You're part of you work with a big media company in Alaska.
Sure.
How can we trust media when, like, Fox News has changed its views on Trump? It's, he lost, so they jumped ship and they're going down a different road. And we've been watching, what's the name of that company, Mike? Newsmax. And I watched Newsmax and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is just making it up on the fly. This is cartoon.
Well, Newsmax is to the Republicans what Huffington Post in written form is to the Democrats. Some of them are very right and very left. I use Newsmax as a resource. I use NBC. I use all of them. Yeah. And I think if people have the time, they have to sift through. I could be, I could prod you and to get a debate and say Fox News is the bastion of efficacy and neutrality, and it's not either. I agree. But I would say, Paul, you just have to dig. Like I get New York Times every morning, and believe me, I don't agree. I agree less than I agree. But when it says a satellite was launched, Minnesota Vikings, my team lost. Paul and Mike got Citizens of the Year. Some of it's fact. So I figure I consider what's fact and what's opining.
But so with all this chaos that's going on at the moment, and it does feel like chaos when you're watching all the news channels. You are watching Newsmax, and they are absolutely saying that Donald Trump will be inaugurated president on the 20th of January, and that it's not over yet, and there's loads to do. And the article that we were going through before you came on, we were talking about the dangers of people losing faith in the electoral process. And there's a big difference between, you said you weren't that hardcore last time. You were very reasonable. You said it's important to just check all the votes are counted. I mean, aren't you worried that to carry on much longer with all of this stuff that Sidney Powell is propagating and Rudy Giuliani, that people are going to lose faith in voting on both sides?
And lose faith in the GOP?
Well, I think not in the GOP. I think that the core group will continue to support them and is exacerbating it by wanting them to challenge it. I'm not one of the challenger fans. I'm one that says, let's move on. And now let's look at the lame Attorney General choice, NC, National Security Council choice, Pete Buttigieg with zero transportation background other than what? South Bend, Indiana, roads and streets. Betsy
DeVos, Tom. Betsy DeVos. You know, let's not get into no experience.
The family.
I think she did a great job. So I think that we move on. You guys aren't going to get me to debate on that one because you don't see me. I don't even talk about it on my radio show. Paul listens sometimes. Biden and Kamala Harris are going to be the next president and vice president. I think there was malfeasance and problems in the election cycle. Would it have made a difference? I don't know. But I want to move on now. I've interviewed Sidney Powell. Did you know she's an acquaintance? Facebook friend, and I've interviewed her maybe 5 times on my show. I know her. So, I'm not going to disrespect her with the comment. She must have, I think, a well-meaning agenda in her mind because you don't know her, you guys, but she's like us. She's a thoughtful, intelligent person. You would enjoy interviewing her. She's thoughtful. She's obviously got her teeth into this bone to go after, and I don't think it's going to change anything. I wish it did, but I don't think it will.
Can I just add, by the way, Tom, I listen to your show at least 3 times a week. It's a very good show. You have some crazy
you're very kind. And you know that sometimes we're petulant and sophomore talking about food or whatever. But for the most part, I think we're rationally based thinking. Now, I have the balls to say I'm a little frustrated with Muslims. Not all. I have some friends that are Muslims. But the mindset on the hostile side, I'm a little frustrated with some of the Democrats more than not. I don't hate Chuck Schumer, but there are some lawmakers that I really dislike, like Ilhan Omar from Minnesota. I wish she did not live in America. She's a very aggressive, anti-patriotic person.
Dear me, that's edgy saying that, innit?
We're looking about the future as well, Tom. How do you see the future of the Republican Party? Do you think Trump will come back in another form away from the party, or do you think he'll go into 2024?
It's a worrisome conundrum, and it's a very good question. My consternation is that I have to decide if I want to support Pence or Ted Cruz in the next cycle. And I'm talking with my staff at Optima. It's very difficult. Of those two, I like them both. I'd probably pick Ted Cruz, but I like them both. And, if Trump came in, I hope not, because he would just, I hope not in 2024. I hope he goes on the election.
Yeah, so do you think that it's run its course, irrespective of whether you like Trump or not like Trump, whatever opinion, it's had its moment?
Yeah. I think that, and I think he did a good job for the most part, and you guys may disagree, but I could name a bunch of areas he did well. His legacy will unfold like Bush's and Obama's and Clinton's, and when we're elderly, we'll probably see the real legacy, not so close, not so close to his departure. He's going to be out. What's his legacy in a year? That's unfair to ask that. You got to ask in 20 years when we're, in our senior years, hopefully still doing this. Then we can say, hey, let's look back. Trump sucked. Or Trump did make momentum.
But do you think is there some chance this is going to calm down a little bit now? Because I'm just saying now.
I think once he's sworn in.
Yeah.
I think once Biden's sworn in, it'll calm down. And I think just like when Al Gore barely lost to Bush, Republicans forget that. He barely lost. It came down to Florida. Things moved on. And Al Gore went on. I give Al Gore credit. I don't love Al Gore, but you got to give him credit for how much money he's made and lecturing, and people listen to him. And he's the guy that lost.
Yeah,
so if Trump plays his cards right, you never know. But I get a bit embarrassed that he's still protesting so vehemently. And rather than a narrative of his departure and what he's done and what he hopes for the future, he's still complaining about that. I don't like that lack of presidential persona, and that he's on my team. So it's like, please stop and let's move on. That's how I feel.
No, it's nice to hear that.
We wouldn't be buddies.
You
two and I wouldn't be buddies if you saw me, striking and freaking out. Still, I mean, you guys would say, we have Tom Anderson on, but he's a little nutty. And
I've learned a lot of stuff off you, Tom, over the years, and I've never said anything different. I mean, there's sometimes I've had a very firm opinion on something, and you've given me something to think about, and it helps. I don't believe that, like in this election, the weird thing is, I do find a lot of his discourse and his personality really abrasive, Trump, but there must be something I'm missing, because 70 million Americans voted for him. I can't explain that to you.
Yeah.
But the way I suppose we'll finish on this as well, and we do thank you for coming on board, Tom.
Yeah, very much.
It's our Christmas show next week. Hopefully we'll see you for a few minutes and join the other candidates who's contributed to this small little programme here in the UK. We do appreciate you. But I want to go push this thing about going forward about misinformation, which is on the internet, misinformation by the media, and how do you think, forget the left and forget the right, how do you think as a journalist you can go forward and look at things and get an honest and clear view?
Well, I encourage your listeners, your viewers, to do what my team does at the Tom Anderson Show, which you can follow, tomandersonshow.com. We're on in Alaska, so we, in the morning, which is evening your time, but what we try to do is vet and do as best we can with time limitations, just like everybody has. There's only so much attention you can give anything. What we try to do is do compare and contrast. The word juxtapose, to put two things together. So I look at Washington Post, New York Times, Fox News. I don't use Newsmax at all, and maybe a regional paper like LA Times or Seattle Times or Minneapolis Star Tribune, and then I try to look quickly at those and say, okay, I get the gist of this, and then I extract it and report it, kind of reform down to the nugget of the facts. And I think that's what people have to do when it comes to Biden and Kamala Harris and the rhetoric that'll be spewed by our team and by the Democrats, so they understand what the policies are being offered, why, how, and everything. And the best example I'll leave you with is the $750 billion for our next PPP relief. The pandemic relief, for instance, $300 a week for unemployment, or before we got $1,000 last year, will we get each family member $600 or $700? How much will we get for small businesses? That's what I read, and I read that in a couple of the more liberal newspapers. I'm trying to vet it. I'm trying to go to U.S. Senate offices, Democrat, Republican, and that's the way to do it. 95% of your audience doesn't have time to do that. So then I would go to your mainstream papers, and I think you'll probably get most of it accurate. I mean, I don't think New York Times or the Manchester paper or the London paper is completely off the wall. A hardcore Republican would say that, but that's nonsense. For the most part, they're reporting what happened. A car wreck occurred. There was a boy and a girl. Maybe there was a comment about their race or age. Maybe they get it wrong, but for the most part, those things are typically accurate. So I think we're okay. I believe in media, and I believe in our voting system. I believe in pharmaceuticals and the vaccines. Who I don't believe in is like a Chinese government, hardcore Muslim lawmakers in America and London and England. And I can get into some of the negative areas, but for the most part, I think our countries are moving forward, and I have faith in them.
Well, this is
Does that make sense?
Do you believe that maybe social media needs regulating, though, after this.
Well, but you're asking an aggrieved party, not literally, but I mean the Republicans feel that there's not a lot of coverage when it comes to conservative-minded things. For instance,
no,
we
there isn't,
feel,
actually.
I can speak for the nation, but I think most of us feel forget the election, Hunter Biden hasn't been covered enough.
Absolutely.
And so when it's Trump and it's Texas, the Republican newsmaker in the room at the press conference maybe doesn't ask that. He or she says, what are your best 3 attributes this week? And you guys laugh and say, what a joke. And 9 out of 10, the other 9 say, what about your taxes? Conversely, 9 out of 10 with Biden say, what are your favorite colors? I'm being facetious.
No,
One says, what about Hunter Biden? And he doesn't answer.
No.
It's must admit it's very biased in education and media to the left.
Well, it did turn out there was some stuff in the Hunter Biden story that everybody did completely ignore because Rudy Giuliani was acting to some people very eccentric and a little out of control. When he kept going on about the laptop, it did seem that it was another one of the crazy stories. But the only channel I saw covering it was One American News, and Newsmax covered it, and the mainstream media didn't touch it.
I'm not too sure.
Yeah, Epoch News is another one I recommend. To me, that leans conservative, but Epoch News, EPOCH. I subscribe to that, and I just subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, and both are good. Epoch is a little more partisan, but it does give a perspective. If you guys wanted to take a test away from One America, Fox, and Newsmax, look at Epoch for a conservative viewpoint.
Tom Anderson from Tom Anderson Show, thank you so much. We'll speak next week.
Thanks, guys. Sounds good.
You take care. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, mate.
Tom Anderson, and he has a great radio show as well in the mornings. If you want to tune in, just type in Tom Anderson Show. It'll come up on Google, you'll find it. At times, and the show before is quite extreme, I think, but Tom's at times balanced, but it's entertaining, and he's well worth listening to. Tom Anderson from Tom Anderson Show here on Mancunian Candidates. Mike, what's up next?
Well, even though some people, it seems, have accepted things and are ready to move on, we do a follow-up on something we covered last week. It turns out that maybe the more further towards the right are still not quite ready to do that, and are looking into somebody's qualifications.
Oh, Dr. Jill Biden. Have you heard about this? She got a PhD in education a few years ago, and now she runs around insisting that everybody calls her doctor. Now, I hate to tell her, I know a lot of PhDs, they don't go around calling themselves doctor. There is this whole adage that if you've delivered a baby, you can call yourself a doctor. Everybody else, it should be Mr. or Mrs. But Dr. Jill, with her doctorate in education, just like Bill Cosby, wants to be called Dr. Jill Biden. I think it's kind of silly. So some guy at the Wall Street Journal named Epstein decided to write an op-ed about it. Is there a doctor in the house? Not if you need an MD. Jill Biden should think about dropping the honorific, which feels fraudulent, even comic. Let's go in. I think we have a quote from the story. He summarized how silly he thought this was. Oh, okay, got a lot to read here. In contemporary universities in the social sciences and humanities, calling oneself doctor is thought bush league. The PhD may once have held prestige, but that has been diminished by the erosion of seriousness and the relaxation of standards in university education generally, at any rate, outside the sciences. And he kind of put her down a little bit, but look, he's an academic and he's writing in the Wall Street Journal, and he made fun a little bit of potentially the next First Lady of the United States. I still don't think it's going to happen, by the way. So everybody in Washington, D.C. went absolutely crazy. I think we have a statement from Biden's communications director, Kate Bedingfield. Oh, wait, actually, let's go through the university first. Northwestern University, they distanced themselves from this guy big time. Joseph Epstein has not been a lecturer at Northwestern since 2003. They go on to say, next, please. Oh, they removed him from their website. He was totally erased. Next. The university statement continues. They called his views misogynistic. And by the way, everybody else in the world totally freaked out. I want to show you. I know it's off my phone. It's a little bit crude, but can you see that? Ooh, Wall Street Journal. You ran a sexist essay on Jill Biden. Don't tell us to calm down. The Wall Street Journal column about Jill Biden is worse than you thought. As critics blast a misogynistic op-ed on Jill Biden, a Wall Street Journal editor blames cancel culture. That was good. The reasons the Wall Street Journal should apologize to Dr. Biden. Wall Street Journal denounced after sexist article calls Jill Biden kiddo. So some of this was coming from the Biden team. They're orchestrating all of this, and it just seemed really, really creepy to me. This guy is a private citizen, and he's making fun of the potential president's wife. So what? I will say this, if you want to see sexist behavior, Joe has been demonstrating it daily, but the mainstream media never call him out. You want to see that again? It was one of the most ridiculous moments I've ever seen, and there are about 1,000 of these ridiculous moments you can choose from. Joe grabbing every woman in sight for a long time. Now, where are the stories about this, right? During the primary it was okay, but now, nope. Such a double standard, right? Such a double standard. For whatever reason, they want to give Joe a pass on just about everything. I think it's because they hate Donald Trump. That's why they're cutting him so much slack.
And welcome back to Remainer TV here on Fab Radio International and YouTube.
So what do you reckon of him grabbing every woman in sight then?
And this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, this is just
every woman
made up TV.
Can't help himself, could he?
People
twice and once in slow motion he grabbed her.
I like the Photoshop of the doctor.
Oh God, I'd be really upset if someone on the mag that we've got did that. I'd be like, wait, look at the lines on it.
Who can you trust when corporations are putting out this bullshit? Absolute bullshit. And corporations are pushing out, and people will believe it.
Well, you know, the problem is, I'll say this. The problem with what we've just watched is it distracts from some really serious stuff that's going on, and you uncovered something that brought to my attention that no one's hardly reporting.
No, but before that, quick few messages there, and I got a few emails from Eddie over in Ireland. How are you doing, Eddie? Do you want to do messages first of all?
Yeah, Stephen Blackmore's saying he thinks it's insane leaving the EU. It's making us look a complete laughing stock, and I disagree with a lot of the emails that you're reading tonight. But he does love the title Remainer TV. Yeah. Nick's saying insane, that's putting it mildly. The Trump administration has redefined insanity. Its citizens have become expendable. 17 million cases, 308,000 deaths. But he's saying to Tom there that Ivanka is supposed to be running Tom. So even if he's one of those two guys he's mentioning there, if it's Ted Cruz or if it's Pence, Ivanka is still in play, or one of the Trumpites. And he also points out PhDs are never comic. They require significant amounts of work. Professors, on the other hand, being honorific is another matter. There's a can of worms opening.
Can of worms. Eddie says here, emails. Well, he said a few things. He says Facebook starts taxing Facebook in the country that they make money from and not offshore in the Cayman Islands. Good point.
Boom.
He also mentioned about Cummins getting a 40 grand pay rise as well.
Yeah, it's a disgrace.
Happened, just after he got.
Yeah, just prior. If he'd have stayed, that was his new pay situation. Yeah. Just after he was deeply involved in all the pay freezes.
All pay freezes, unless you're a Tory.
Wow.
What's she called? Is Mrs.
Carrie Simmons.
Well, her best mate, she's got a new job as well. In the mates at university, so they made a job up. There's no interview. I'm your mate. You've got 50 grand. Part-time job. Well done. Tory party.
Like someone made this up for me. I can't really criticise. This got made up for me, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. So let's move on.
Okay, so I was discussing with Tom there, and I had quite a heated, I would say he got it wasn't a major disagreement, but we have a certain woman who I think, when it comes to COVID and what's gone on, he has a very different opinion from me about the governor of South Dakota. And I would like to watch a video, and you can then make your mind up whether you think that she's done a top-notch job as governor of South Dakota.
In North Dakota's largest city, masks are now required as the state grapples with a virus that has now claimed 1 in every 1,000 residents.
We didn't take COVID very seriously as a state as a whole.
I think we should have had a mandate a couple months ago to slow this thing down.
Bordering Manitoba with half the population, North Dakota has 10 times the infection rate.
If this virus hadn't been here, he would still be alive.
Manitoba-born 58-year-old Tony Lepke was a truck driver living in Fargo. His sister says he was taking precautions.
It's a serious, serious virus that we really need to get under control.
Among the reddest of red states, North Dakota largely put individual liberties ahead of collective health initiatives, only requiring masks once hospitals were overwhelmed. Neighboring South Dakota still is not.
There was a day last week where we hit actually 88% positivity.
As the warning of health officials meet resistance against broad public health restrictions.
I really feel that this country really needs to stand up for what it believes.
If people choose not to, we still should treat them with respect.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem has been criticized for downplaying the danger of the virus.
My people are happy. They're happy because they're free.
Meanwhile, gatherings in both states, like the 365,000 people at the Sturgis motorcycle rally last August, have led to outbreaks in other parts of the U.S. That closed border with Manitoba proving to be a critical line to keeping it from spreading. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
We invited Governor Noem to join us this morning, but she declined. But here to describe what she's seeing on the front lines in South Dakota is Jody Doring. She's a registered nurse who has called the coronavirus crisis in her state, quote, a horror movie that never ends. Nurse Doring, thank you so much for being here. When I read some of your tweets, my jaw dropped. You said that even now that the hospital is being overrun with COVID patients, they come in, they're horribly ill, they're gasping for breath, and yet they don't believe they have COVID?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing to watch is that people are still looking for something else and they want a magic answer and they don't want to believe that COVID is real. And the reason I tweeted what I did is it wasn't one particular patient. It's just a culmination of so many people. And their last dying words are, this can't be happening. It's not real. And when they should be spending time FaceTiming their families, they're filled with anger and hatred, and it just made me really sad the other night. And I just can't believe that those are going to be their last thoughts and words.
Anger and hatred towards you?
I think it's just a belief that it's not real, and nursing happens to be on the receiving end of that. And that's okay. We can take that. That's what you're there for. It's just in the bigger picture when you try to reason with people of, can I call your family, your kids, your wife, your friend, your brother? And they say no, because I'm going to be fine. And you're watching their oxygen levels, maxed out on what we call vapotherm at 100%, and their oxygen level might be 75. That's not really that compatible with life. And we know where that's going to head. And it just makes you sad and mad and frustrated. And then you know that you're just going to come back and do it all over again. And that's kind of where that stemmed from.
How could it not make your own head explode? They're gasping for breath. Their oxygen levels are dropping. What do they think is wrong with them?
I think people look for anything. People want it to be influenza. They want it to be pneumonia. They want it to be, we've even had people say, well, I think maybe it might be lung cancer. Something so far-fetched. And the reality is, since day one, when COVID started in this area in March, you've kind of been able to say, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. Like, I hate to tell you that you have COVID, but that's what you have. even after positive results come back, some people just don't believe it. Now, that's not everybody. We have a lot of patients who are very, very grateful for their care and very thankful for what you do. But unfortunately, that's not what I'm remembering right now. And as my nursing career, that's not what I want to be remembering for. I want to remember the saves and the happy situations. And what I was remembering chilling on the couch the other night with my dog was not that.
Of course not. I mean, of course not. And it's just so mind-blowing to think that they would rather have lung cancer. They'd rather a diagnosis of lung cancer than of coronavirus. And so, I mean, you've said that it just, I mean, if I quote you from morning television, it's an effing horror movie that you live every day. And so what toll is this taking on you?
Yeah, hindsight, I didn't realize that this was going to go viral. I probably could have left the F-bomb out of there, but the reality is that's how you feel. And so it is like it's just a movie where the credits never roll. You just do it all over again. And it's hard and sad because every hospital, every nurse, every doctor in this state is seeing the same things. These people get sick in the same way. You treat them in the same way. They die in the same way, and then you do it over again. And we're so thankful for the lessons we've learned along the way, and we're doing a good job of taking care of the people that come in. And we're managing our patient loads here right now. Sometimes it's day to day, sometimes it's hour to hour. But the reality is that right now it's not getting better. You said just as you started the show, 50 to 60% positivity rate. I mean, our entire state has 880,000 people. It doesn't take much to do the math on that for how many of us are sick.
Kristi Noem, Governor of South Dakota. This is how we do social distancing in our state.
That was great.
Less COVID, more hunting. That's the plan for the future.
Less COVID, more hunting. That's the plan for the future. I think she's an animal. I actually think she's an animal. I respect Tom's opinion on loads of stuff here. We've discussed it with Tom Anderson, but on her, I can't agree. I think she's a reprehensible human being. She's an example of that rugged individualism where true grit, isn't she? She's a cowgirl. She appeals to the South Dakotans or South Dakotans. Is that it? I don't know. But she has said, basically, don't wear a mask if you don't want to. She does go with Trump on it's a bit pansy, it's a little bit weak to be seen wearing a mask. She never wears one. She goes along with Trump. She's not locked anything down. They have not done any lockdown whatsoever. They are the leading state, the leading area on planet Earth, not America, not even half the globe, the entire planet. South Dakota is leading in deaths, in COVID, and this week it has hit the high. It's going to the apocalypse, that state.
It's absolutely crazy, but look what's happening here in the UK. In the UK, our death rates in comparison to the percentage of people who live here, we're in a crazy situation. I really want to push home to you as well. This Christmas, forget it. It's over with. Forget this Christmas, please.
Well, you can have something, right? Well, I've just said to talk about the situation in the UK. It's complicated, but in many levels. No, I was about to let me finish. It's complicated. What comments? I just said you didn't. You stopped me. Before. Oh, what's the point of being here then? What's the point of being here then? What's the point of being here?
It's for a few days. 5 days. Do we need 5 days?
Yeah, you didn't even let me say. I'm done now. I'm not taking part in the rest of the show. If that's it, there's no point.
Right. Well, I'll have a few comments here. This is about people being misinformed. Eddie, our wonderful, wonderful guy who's over in Ireland, sent me a message. Ivanka was not born in the US, so cannot stand. What does that say? That's misinformation, Eddie. You got it wrong. She's born in New York. So you are picking up misinformation and spreading it, and that's my point. Misinformation. Mike, please carry on.
Right, can I finish now?
Yes.
Right, what I was about to say is it made the background to all of this may be complicated with lots of social factors and lots of different areas who all have different needs. But I was going to say it's incredibly simple. when the only time the government's policy has worked has been when they kept it simple and when it's lockdown. Lockdown means lockdown. Don't go out here unless you've got a job that requires it. And then suddenly the virus can't spread and it just collapses in on itself. And it was down to zero nearly. It was very, very few figures. There were some days it hadn't even got to treble figures. You had 10 dead, 6 dead. And it worked. And then if we'd have done that, we could have got to that point and then carried on. And instead of this, this obsession with Christmas, to me, is absolutely insane. I don't understand it. I don't understand why everybody just thinks that they can just have those 3 or 4 days and live in some cloud cuckoo land where they're ignoring what's gone on, and then it's going to be all right. In January, our staff in all the hospitals around the country are going to be trying to vaccinate people, and you want as many freed up healthcare workers to get the vaccines to people. Instead, the wards are going to be full of cases of COVID. That's all. That's to me.
Well, also, we've got, I'm glad to say, we've sorted out a little problem we had before as well. So we've got a finishing clip about, we're saying about Trump, what has Trump been doing since he lost the election?
What we're seeing, we're in the midst of a series of executions here that really, in a lot of ways, turn the clock back. That this is behavior from the federal government that's something we haven't seen in decades. We have been on a track now, going back through much of our recent history, in which there has been new constriction of the use of the death penalty, a broad understanding and consensus across our politics that too often we get it wrong, that there are innocent people who are convicted, there are innocent people who've been locked up, and that we do not want to take the chance of killing the wrong person. There's been a shift in public sentiment over the years that would make us more cautious and less likely to employ something like the death penalty. But what we're seeing now in the final days of the Trump administration is a show of force, a show of power, this decision to kind of execute a wave of people, to kill a wave of people purely just because the president can and the Justice Department can't. Right, that there was not a particular rush in any of these cases, as in most death penalty cases. These are cases that have stretched on for years, for decades in some cases. Yet the president himself likes to be seen as a strong leader, as an authoritarian type. He wanted to do these. The Justice Department agreed with him. And so what we're seeing is the biggest wave of executions, in part so that the president can claim he was as tough as any president of our time as it relates to, so-called violent criminals.
And it's interesting to see this on the heels of him making these performative efforts to reach black voters, which, didn't go his way. So now he doesn't feel a need to do this kind of performative outreach, I suppose. I should note, though, that I think is really important that the death penalty being imposed is often by state governments. So the fact that the federal government is imposing this is quite bizarre, I think. Because public support for the death penalty has waned so much, what will it take to outlaw the death penalty?
So we've seen in a number of cases in many states, new state laws that have gotten rid of or abolished the death penalty, voters going to the ballot boxes in various places and saying our state should not do this. What we also see in many other cases is even states that do not have laws in the books outlawing the death penalty or getting rid of its usage, governors and legislatures and politics of the states where they basically say, all right, we're not going to do this, right? This is not who we are, and this is not what we are. In practicality, we're not going to execute. What we know is that just a handful of states commit most of the execution in the United States of America, and that has always been true, that the majority of executions occur in southern states, and we'll get into the history as to why in a minute. And in many ways, this has kind of been sitting at the court level for a long time, where the disagreements between laws from one state to the other and the difficulty that increases. In many cases, states have difficulty getting a hold of the cocktail for the drugs used to execute people. Right. This has begging for some level of Supreme Court intervention for a long time, right? Because again, the role of the Supreme Court very often is to mediate these types of policy disagreements between states as to what is true and what is not. And so what we imagine is that eventually this is probably something that is taken up by the High Court.
Yes, that sounds right.
I just find it chilling because there has to be a reason why he's embarked on this. And normally you can understand the grift with the election fraud. He's trying to raise some money before he leaves. You can understand the tax cut. He was doing that for his mates. You can understand the kids in cages because he wanted to clamp down on immigrants because he's a bit racist. What is he doing here?
I personally think he's appealing to a certain part of his crowd who are racist.
Yeah, I mean, he's to what you think? I don't know off top of my head. I know a lot of these are black. There's 8 people due for execution. I can't say they're all black, but the 2 that have already been executed since the story broke are black.
He's appealing to his fan base, isn't it? Simple as that.
So you think that he actually wants to kill some black people on the way out the door?
You can trust me. KKK.
Yeah, good people on both sides.
On that note, and a sad note, and it is a sad show in many ways because of what's happened. Breaking news here about so many 532 deaths in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
Terrible times, but we'll be back next week. My name's Paul Ripley.
And I'm Mike Royce. Take care. Thank you for watching. I'm impressed. You've passed the IQ test and got this far, so let's press that button. Let's do the last thing that helps us. It's got subscribe on it, you can't miss it, and please ring the bell for notifications of future videos.